I never told my stepchildren about the $30 million empire I built from their father's modest tech startup. To them, I was just Eleanor, the quiet widow in her mid-50s, knitting scarves and tending to a small garden in my cozy but dated cottage on the outskirts of town. I drove an old sedan that rattled on bumpy roads, wore clothes from thrift stores, and clipped coupons for groceries. Why reveal the truth? My late husband, Thomas, and I had agreed long ago. Wealth was a tool, not a crown. We lived simply to teach our blended family the value of hard work and humility. Thomas had started the company in our garage, a basic cybersecurity tool for small businesses, back when Lila and Ethan were just kids from his first marriage. After Beatrice left him for a wealthier man, I came into the picture, helping him nurture both the family and the fledgling business. We poured our souls into it, late nights coding and debugging while the children slept. When Thomas passed 5 years ago from a sudden heart attack, I could have sold it all and retired lavishly. Instead, I honored our pact. I expanded it remotely, turning it into a powerhouse, signing deals with Fortune 500 clients from my laptop in the sunroom, all while maintaining the facade of a struggling retiree. The money flowed into investments, trusts, and silent philanthropy, but outwardly, nothing changed. To Lila and Ethan, I was the fragile relic they pitied, sending occasional checks just in case. They never suspected the pension I mentioned was a fraction of my executive salary, or that their gifts were dwarfed by the anonymous scholarships I'd funded for their educations. That all changed when Lila called me one crisp autumn afternoon. Her voice bubbled with excitement, but there was an undercurrent of hesitation, like she was bracing for my response. "Eleanor, I'm pregnant. It's a girl. We just found out. We're throwing a huge baby shower at this gorgeous resort upstate. 5 stars, full spa, private villas, the works. Mom's side of the family is flying in from Europe. You have to come. It'll be perfect for everyone to meet the extended family." There was a pause, then a softer, almost apologetic tone. "I know it's a bit fancy, and the drive might be long for you, but we'll cover your room and everything. Don't worry about a thing. Ethan will pick you up if needed." Something in her words stung, not the generosity, but the unspoken assumption behind it. Lila's biological mother, Beatrice, had remarried into old money after divorcing Thomas decades ago. Beatrice's family, the Hargroves, were socialites with sprawling estates in the Hamptons, yachts docked in Monaco, and a family lineage traced back to European nobility through some dubious genealogy service. They oozed entitlement, the kind that whispered judgments behind crystal wine glasses while sipping vintage Bordeaux. I'd met them only once before at Lila's wedding years ago, where they'd eyed my simple knee-length dress like it was a relic from a bygone era, murmuring about quaint simplicity with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Now, with a grandchild on the way, the first in the Hargrove line, they were descending en masse, no doubt ready to imprint their stamp of approval or disdain. I could already picture the scene. Me, the poor stepmom, amid their diamonds, designer labels, and casual mentions of private jets. Would they treat me with genuine warmth, or would their civility crack under the weight of perceived class differences? A spark of curiosity, and yes, a touch of defiance, ignited within me. My instinct, honed from years of navigating cutthroat boardrooms disguised as a mild-mannered widow, told me this was a test. If they expected a downtrodden, out-of-touch widow, I'd give them exactly that. I'd play the part to the hilt, observe their reactions, and see their true colors shine through. It wasn't about revenge, it was about discernment, about protecting my peace and ensuring my stepchildren surrounded themselves with people of substance, not superficiality. "I'd love to come, dear," I replied sweetly, injecting a hint of frailty into my voice. "Just tell me what to wear, nothing too fancy, I hope. My wardrobe is a bit limited these days." The weekend arrived sooner than expected. I spent the days leading up to it preparing my disguise, rummaging through my closet for the shabbiest outfits. A faded floral dress that hung loosely on my frame, scuffed flats that had seen better decades, and a knitted shawl I'd made myself during one of those quiet evenings. No makeup to hide the fine lines around my eyes. No jewelry except my plain gold wedding band, tarnished from years of wear. I even practiced my posture in the mirror, slightly hunched shoulders, timid steps, a hesitant smile, to embody the naive, broke widow they likely imagined. Instead of driving my reliable but unremarkable sedan, I opted for the bus, arriving with a worn suitcase that squeaked on its wheels like a reluctant companion. The resort was a marble palace nestled in rolling hills, chandeliers twinkling like captured stars, fresh orchids perfuming every corner, valets in crisp uniforms whisking away luxury cars. Layla spotted me first, rushing over in a flowing maternity gown that screamed high fashion, silk chiffon with delicate embroidery, probably from a Parisian atelier. Her bump was just starting to show, and she glowed with that expectant mother radiance. "Eleanor, you made it!" She hugged me tightly, but I caught her eyes flicking over my attire with a subtle flicker of embarrassment, quickly masked by a bright smile. "Come, meet everyone. Mom's been asking about you." Behind her stood Beatrice, elegant as ever in a tailored silk pantsuit, the color of fresh cream, her neck dripping with a cascade of pearls that caught the light like tiny moons. Flanking her were her siblings. Aunt Vivian, a former model whose Botox smooth skin and sharp cheekbones screamed eternal youth, clad in a form-fitting cocktail dress, and Uncle Harold, a banker with a paunch hidden under an impeccably cut suit, his wrist adorned with a watch that probably cost more than my entire visible wardrobe. They smiled politely, but their eyes appraised me like a flea market find amid antique treasures, pity mixed with a dash of superiority. "Eleanor, darling," Beatrice cooed, air-kissing my cheeks without actual contact, her perfume a cloud of expensive jasmine. "How quaint you look. Was the trip exhausting? We could have sent a car. Our driver was just idling anyway." "Oh, no need at all," I said timidly, hunching my shoulders a bit more and clutching my suitcase handle like a lifeline. "The bus was perfectly fine. Saves a bit of money, you know. And I got to see the countryside." I let my voice waver just enough, playing the overwhelmed widow to perfection, my eyes wide as if the lobby's grandeur was a foreign wonder. Vivian poured me a glass of champagne from a nearby tray, her manicured nails clicking against the flute. "Here, dear, bubbly to celebrate. So, Eleanor, what do you do these days? Still gardening? Or is it knitting? Beatrice mentioned you have such simple hobbies." I nodded meekly, sipping the bubbly like it was my first taste of luxury, letting a tiny cough escape as if the fizz surprised me. "Oh yes, a bit of both. It keeps me busy since Thomas passed. The pension doesn't stretch far, but I make do with what I have. A little weeding here, a scarf there. Nothing exciting like your lives, I'm sure. Harold chuckled, swirling his scotch in a crystal tumbler, the ice clinking like a subtle boast. Admirable, really. In our family, we've always believed in building legacies that last generations. Beatrice here manages our charitable foundation, millions in grants to worthy causes. What about you? Any investments tucked away? Stocks? Bonds? Perhaps a little real estate? I pretended to fidget with my shawl, twisting the yarn between my fingers as if the question flustered me. Investments? Goodness, no. I wouldn't know where to start. Thomas left me a little nest egg, but it's mostly gone on bills and such. I stick to my savings account. Safe and simple. Beatrice exchanged a knowing glance with Vivian, their eyebrows arching in unison like a silent code. Poor dear. Widows like you are so brave, scraping by on so little. We should chat later. I could connect you with our financial advisor. Nothing major, just some tips to stretch that pension. Maybe even a small stipend from the foundation. We help cases like yours all the time. The condescension hung in the air like her perfume, thick and cloying. Ethan arrived then, my stepson, tall and earnest in a casual blazer, hugging me with genuine warmth. Eleanor, glad you're here. You okay? Need anything? Of course, dear, I whispered, patting his arm. But inside I observed everything. The way Vivian's lips curled slightly at my dress, Harold's dismissive nod, Beatrice's feigned sympathy. This was just the beginning. We settled into the private suite for pre-shower cocktails, a sprawling room overlooking manicured gardens dotted with fountains. The spread was extravagant, caviar on blinis, champagne flutes etched with gold, artisanal cheeses flown in from France. Guests trickled in, mostly Hargrove relatives and their elite circle, air-kissing and name-dropping. I perched on the edge of a velvet sofa, nursing my drink, listening as conversations flowed around me like a river I wasn't invited to swim in. Vivian leaned in, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. Eleanor, tell us about your cottage. Is it cozy? We have a summer home in the Alps. 10 bedrooms, ski and access. You must visit sometime, though the altitude might be tough at your age. It's small but homey, I replied softly, eyes downcast. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen. No frills, but it's mine. I don't travel much. Too expensive, you see. Harold piped up, his tone paternal. Smart to live within means. Not everyone can afford our lifestyle. Private schools for the grandkids. Trust funds from birth. Beatrice and I set up one for Lila's little one already. $100,000 to start, compounding nicely. Beatrice nodded proudly. It's what family does. Support the next generation. Eleanor, did you ever set anything up for the kids? Even a small savings bond? I shook my head, feigning regret. I wish I could have. Thomas and we did our best. But no, nothing like that. The pity in their eyes was palpable, a veil over their relief that I posed no threat to their influence. As the afternoon wore on, the snubs grew subtler. Vivian accidentally spilling details of their latest yacht purchase. Harold boasting about golfing with CEOs. Beatrice suggesting I try the cheaper appetizers to not overindulge. The baby shower proper began in the grand ballroom, a sea of pink and blue balloons floating like dreams. Gift tables piled high with silver rattles, monogrammed blankets, and imported crib linens. I sat at a side table nibbling a canapé, watching as they fawned over Lila, who opened presents with delighted gasps. Crystal mobiles from Tiffany, a designer stroller worth thousands, a custom nursery set from Italy. During a lull, Beatrice pulled me aside to a quiet alcove. her expression a mask of concern. Eleanor, we're thrilled about the baby, truly. But honestly, at your age, living alone in that cottage, have you thought about assisted living? We could help fund it, nothing fancy, just something modest, safe. We don't want Lila worrying about you. It could stress the pregnancy and, heaven forbid, affect the baby. Her tone was syrupy sweet, but the implication sliced like a knife. I was a liability, a dusty antique cluttering their polished world. Harold joined us, nodding sagely. Exactly. We've got connections to excellent facilities. $500 a month from us could cover the basics. Meals, activities, that sort of thing. In return, perhaps give the kids some space to focus on their new family without distractions. I lowered my eyes, feigning gratitude mixed with vulnerability. That's so kind of you both. I wouldn't want to be a burden. I've managed so far, but yes, it's getting harder. Lila overheard from nearby, her face flushing with discomfort. Mom, that's not necessary. Eleanor's fine on her own. Beatrice waved it off with a manicured hand. Nonsense, darling. We're family. Well, extended family. It's what we do for those less fortunate. Eleanor understands, don't you, dear? Vivian chimed in, her voice dripping honeyed venom. Absolutely. We've helped aunts and uncles before, discreetly, of course. No one wants to be the poor relation at family gatherings. The rage simmered within me, cold and calculated, like lines of code compiling in my mind after years of debugging corporate crises. I'd endured enough, their barbs, their assumptions, their thinly veiled attempts to sideline me. It was time to debug this farce. As dessert arrived, tiny gold-flecked pastries, arranged like jewels on porcelain plates, the tension peaked. Harold attempted to settle a sidebar tab for extra wines, but his credit card was declined. Must be a glitch, he blustered, face reddening, as he pulled out another. Declined again. The waiter hovered awkwardly, the room's chatter dipping into curious whispers. I stood slowly, my timid posture straightening, like a program executing its final command. Allow me. I reached into my frayed purse and produced a sleek, black platinum card, the kind issued to elite executives with no spending limit. The room quieted as I handed it over. It cleared instantly, the waiter nodding with deference. Beatrice blinked, her pearls suddenly seeming less luminous. Eleanor? How on earth? I smiled, no longer meek, my voice firm and resonant from countless boardroom negotiations. Because that's my corporate card, unlimited access. From the company I run, Thomas's startup. I didn't let it die with him, I grew it. We're worth $30 million now, a leader in cybersecurity solutions. Your family's bank uses our software, Harold. I've seen the contracts, anonymously, of course, and those investments you've been struggling with. I've bailed them out 3 times this year through back channels, keeping your foundation afloat without a whisper. Vivian's face paled, her Botox unable to hide the shock. Impossible. You're just a widow, a gardener. A widow? Yes, I replied coolly, but not broke, not naive, not helpless. I pretended tonight, dressed like this, acted overwhelmed, to see how you'd treat someone without your privileges. And you did. With pity, exclusion, condescension, and bribes to shuffle me away like an inconvenient relic. Ethan stared, fork frozen mid-air. Eleanor, why hide it all these years? I turned to him and Lila, my tone softening. Because Thomas and I wanted you both to earn your way, to value effort over entitlement. We built that company from nothing, Sleepless nights in the garage, ramen dinners while debugging code, money whispers when it's real, arrogance screams for attention. And tonight I heard the screams loud and clear from across the table. The room was frozen in a way I'd only ever seen once before, during a hostile takeover when the opposing board realized the deal was already signed. No one spoke. Even the string quartet near the windows faltered, their music dissolving into an awkward hush. Beatrice was the first to recover, though recover was generous. Her lips parted, then pressed together, as if every word she'd ever rehearsed suddenly felt unsafe. You should have told us," she finally said, her voice thin. "Family doesn't keep secrets like this." I tilted my head slightly. Family also doesn't offer allowances to make people disappear. Harold cleared his throat, straightening his jacket in a reflexive attempt to regain authority. "Now, Eleanor, let's be reasonable. This was all a misunderstanding. We were only trying to help." "Help," I repeated softly. "You weren't helping. You were managing optics. I didn't fit your image of success, so you tried to store me somewhere out of sight, like an old file you didn't want cluttering your desktop." Vivian laughed nervously. "Oh, come on, darling, you're being dramatic. It was all said in good humor." I looked at her then, really looked. "Humor punches up, Vivian. What you did punch down." Lila stood, her hands resting protectively over her belly. "Enough, all of you. This was supposed to be a celebration." Her voice trembled, but it held. "Eleanor didn't embarrass anyone tonight. You did." Beatrice turned to her daughter, stunned. "Lila." "No," Lila interrupted. "I saw everything, the looks, the comments, the way you spoke about her, like she wasn't in the room, like she wasn't human." Ethan moved beside her, placing a steadying hand on her back. "We're done pretending this is normal." That word, pretending, hung in the air like smoke. I picked up my shawl, the same one Vivian had dismissed earlier, and draped it over my arm. I didn't come here to shame anyone. I came because I wanted to see whether kindness in this family was conditional. Tonight answered that question. Beatrice's eyes filled, not with remorse but with fear. Fear of exposure. Fear of losing control. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. I met her gaze. "Now? Nothing dramatic. I go home. You go on as you always have. But the difference is this. You'll never wonder whether I see you clearly. I do. And you'll know that I chose silence for years, not because I lacked power, but because I didn't need to use it." I turned to Lila and Ethan, my voice soft again. "I'm proud of you. Both of you. Protect your peace, especially now." Lila nodded, tears slipping free. Ethan squeezed her hand. As I walked toward the exit, the room slowly came back to life. Whispers restarting, glances following, reputations recalibrating in real time. Behind me, I heard Beatrice say my name, as if hoping it might stop me. I didn't turn around. Some truths don't need an encore. The drive home was quiet. Not the heavy kind of silence filled with regret, but the clean kind. The kind that comes after a storm passes, and the air finally feels breathable again. Street lights slid across the windshield in slow rhythm, and for the first time that evening, I let my shoulders relax. At a red light, my phone vibrated. A message from Beatrice. "Eleanor, I think we got off on the wrong foot. Perhaps we should talk privately. Family matters should stay within the family." I stared at the screen for a moment, then placed the phone face down in the console without replying. Some conversations happen too late to matter. By the time I reached my driveway, another message had come through. This one from Vivian. "You didn't have to humiliate us like that." I let out a quiet breath. Humiliation, I thought, is what happens when people finally see themselves clearly and don't like the reflection. Inside the house, I kicked off my flats, poured myself a glass of water, and stood by the kitchen window. The neighborhood was peaceful. Porch lights glowed softly. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once and then settled. This was my real life, not the ballroom, not the pearls, not the performance. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Ethan. I didn't know. I should have seen it sooner. "I'm sorry. Thank you for protecting us, even when we didn't realize we needed it." That message, more than any apology from Beatrice, mattered. I replied simply, "You're welcome. Protect Lila. Protect your child. That's what matters now." I slept deeply that night. The next morning, my assistant called while I was making coffee. "Morning, Eleanor. Just a heads up. Our PR team flagged something. The Hargrove Foundation has been calling around. They're asking questions." I smiled faintly. "Let me guess. They're trying to figure out who I am." "Yes, and whether you're dangerous." I took a sip of coffee. "I'm not dangerous. I'm just not invisible anymore." Later that afternoon, an envelope arrived by courier. Heavy paper, cream-colored, embossed lettering, an invitation, a private family meeting, hosted by Beatrice and Harold. No agenda listed, just a date, a time, a location. I didn't RSVP, because power doesn't chase closure, and dignity doesn't negotiate with people who only listen when they feel threatened. That evening, Lila came by with Ethan. She hugged me tightly the moment she stepped inside. "I didn't sleep much," she admitted. "I kept replaying everything." I guided her to the couch. "That's normal. Growth is uncomfortable." She hesitated, then said quietly, "My mother's never been told no like that before. She doesn't know what to do." I met her eyes. "That's not your responsibility." Ethan nodded. "We're setting boundaries, real ones. No more financial strings, no more comments. If they can't respect that, we step back." I reached for his hand. That's how cycles break. As they left, I realized something profound. I hadn't just defended myself. I'd changed the trajectory of the next generation. And that, more than money, more than power, more than status, was the real inheritance. I thought that would be the end of it, that Beatrice and Harold would retreat quietly, lick their wounds behind closed doors, and pretend none of it had happened. People like them don't do that. They regroup. 3 days later, my assistant called again, this time with urgency she rarely used. "Eleanor, the Hargrove Foundation just issued a press release." I closed my laptop slowly. "About what?" "They're announcing a strategic restructuring. They're distancing themselves from several partners, including us." I smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. "So they're posturing," I said, "trying to look decisive." "Yes, but there's more. They've also quietly leaked that they were misled by an anonymous tech firm, implying misconduct. No names yet, just smoke." There it was. The old tactic, control the narrative before the truth arrives. I leaned back in my chair, fingers steepled. Schedule a call with legal and compliance and audit. Within an hour, my board was assembled on video. Faces serious, focused. One of the directors spoke first. "They're attempting to undermine us without evidence." "They don't need evidence," I replied calmly. They're relying on reputation, theirs, and assumptions about mine. Another director frowned. Should we respond? No, I said, not yet. Because when people attack from arrogance, they always overreach. By that afternoon, the whispers had started. A few financial blogs picked up the story. Vague language, speculation, comment sections buzzing with theories. I didn't correct them. Instead, I authorized something I'd avoided for years: transparency. We released our full compliance report, 5 years of clean audits, third-party certifications, government contracts, international security clearances, every number pristine, every process documented. Then I did something else. I scheduled an interview, not with a flashy outlet, with a long-form business journal known for one thing: facts. The interviewer asked me why I'd stayed anonymous for so long. I answered honestly, because I wanted the work to speak louder than my name. She asked about the foundation's claims. I smiled slightly. People often accuse others of what they fear being exposed themselves. That line made headlines. Within 24 hours, attention shifted. Journalists started digging, not into us, but into the Hargrove Foundation. Old financials resurfaced, questionable valuations, unusual asset transfers, a pattern of last-minute bailouts, ours quietly routed through intermediaries. Suddenly, the narrative flipped. By the end of the week, Beatrice's name appeared in an article, not celebratory, analytical, sharp, and for the first time, the pearls weren't shining. Lila called me that night. "Mom's furious," she said softly. "She says you're destroying the family." I closed my eyes. "No, sweetheart, I'm just not protecting their illusion anymore." A pause. Then Lila said, "I'm proud of you." That mattered more than any headline, because power doesn't need revenge. It just needs the truth to be patient. The call came on a Sunday morning. I knew who it was before I answered, Beatrice's number. I let it ring once, twice. Then I picked up. "Eleanor," she said, breathless, like someone who had practiced the opening line too many times. "Thank you for taking my call." I didn't respond immediately. Silence, I've learned, is the most honest answer. "We need to talk," she continued, "but privately, woman to woman." "I'm listening," I said calmly. She exhaled. "Things have spiraled. The press, the board, the donors, they're asking questions. They're misunderstanding intentions." I almost smiled. "Intentions don't matter once patterns are visible," I replied. Another pause, longer this time. "I never meant to hurt you," she said softly. "If I came across as dismissive, it wasn't personal." "It was," I said, not unkindly. "You just didn't think I'd ever be in a position to name it." Her voice cracked. "We didn't know who you were." "And that," I replied, "is exactly the problem." She tried again. "Perhaps we could move forward. Put this behind us for the sake of the family." Family. The word felt different now, lighter, clearer. "Beatrice," I said gently, "family is not a shield you raise only when consequences arrive. It's how you behave when no one is watching." She was quiet. "I forgave you the moment I stopped expecting anything from you," I continued. "But forgiveness doesn't mean access, and it doesn't mean influence." "So, that's it?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "that's it." After we hung up, I sat by the window for a long time. No triumph, no satisfaction, just closure. That week, the foundation quietly announced Beatrice's resignation for personal reasons. Harold followed soon after. No scandalous headlines, no dramatic exits, just absence. Ethan and Lila invited me over for dinner that Friday. Simple food, laughter, no performances. As I watched Ethan help Lila up from the table, one hand steady on her back, I realized something profound. Power doesn't always roar when it wins. Sometimes it steps aside and lets the next generation breathe. And that night, as I drove home under a calm, open sky, I understood the final truth. I didn't reveal who I was to take something from them. I revealed who I was so I would never have to shrink again. Life didn't change overnight, and that's the part people rarely talk about. After the headlines faded and the whispers found new targets, morning still arrived quietly. Coffee still cooled too fast if I got distracted. Emails still piled up. The world didn't pause to acknowledge emotional victories. But I had changed, and that made all the difference. A month later, I was invited to speak at a women's leadership forum, not as a mystery figure, not as a headline, but as myself. They asked me to talk about resilience, about legacy, about power. I didn't mention Beatrice. I didn't mention humiliation. I didn't mention revenge. I talked about silence. How silence can be chosen, I told them, and how it can also be forced. The difference matters. One is strength. The other is erasure. The room was quiet. I continued. For years, I chose silence because I didn't need to explain myself. But the moment silence is used to diminish you, to push you aside, to make you smaller than you are, that is when speaking becomes necessary. After the talk, a young woman approached me, nervous, hands shaking slightly. "They treat me like I don't belong," she said, "like I should be grateful just to be in the room." I smiled gently. "Then remember this," I told her. "You don't need permission to exist loudly or quietly, but never let anyone confuse your humility with weakness." She cried. I hugged her. That was the real win. At home, Ethan and Lila settled into their new rhythm. Boundaries were tested, pushed, and finally respected. The baby arrived in early spring, a quiet miracle wrapped in blankets, too soft to describe. They named her Hope, not after a relative, not after tradition, but after what they chose to build. Sometimes Lila would sit beside me on the couch, one hand on her daughter's back, and say quietly, "I never want her to grow up thinking she has to earn respect." "She won't," I replied. "You'll teach her better." As for Beatrice and Harold, I heard about them occasionally, a gala they didn't attend, a board they no longer chaired, a circle that slowly stopped calling. Not punishment, just consequence. And strangely, I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt release, because the goal was never to take something from them. It was to stop carrying what never belonged to me. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted my living room gold, I stood by the window and reflected on everything that had unfolded. I thought about the woman I pretended to be that night, the one they dismissed, the one they pitied, the one they underestimated, and I smiled, because she was never weak. She was observant. She was patient. She was prepared. And when the moment came, she didn't shout. She simply stood up. If you stayed with me until the end, thank you. Tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? If this story resonated with you, support the channel with a like, a subscribe, or a super thanks so I can keep sharing stories that remind us of our worth. On the screen now, you'll see 2 more life stories I highly recommend. Until next time, with love, dignity, and respect.